I expressed my dismay to Lewis. "What is going on, Alan?" he explained. "It's a big power struggle in the church. The preacher's taking charge. It used to be that the sisters and the old deacons ran the service. They raised the songs, they kept them going, and those songs brought the mourners through. But they've lost most of that power now. The preacher controls the choir and the pianist and the music director, and so now he runs the service. His bunch holds the floor with the new gospel songs that the old sisters and deacons don't like and can't sing. The church is pushing those songs right across the country. My guess is that there's a tie-up between the big preachers and the publishers somehow. One thing for sure, there's a lot of money being made out of the whole thing." Later on, I got to know the principal gospel composer, Thomas Dorsey, a remarkable talent who had arranged for the Louis Armstrong Hot 5 sessions and a raft of jazz and blues recordings. With the decline of jazz, Dorsey explained to me, I turned my collar around and originated gospel harmony. I've done well. Gospel likewise has done well, producing big stars like zingy Rosetta Tharpe and glorious Mahalia Jackson, becoming re-Africanized as the Black Quartets, and then congregations took it over, wove in the old spiritual patterns, heated up its rhythms, and sang its respectable pants off. Perhaps human song reached its peak in the performances of gospel quartets like the Soul Stirrers and the Blind Boys of Atlanta. Next, gospel, as its jazzy origins well prepared it to do, crossed over and became soul, a new black genre of pop ballad. Love's longing was expressed with the fervor of the worshiper at the peak of the service and in matching musical terms. Soul singers like Aretha Franklin and Patti LaBelle, who crisscrossed, that is, moved from gospel to soul and back again and then back over, infused soul with gospel, gospel with soul, doubling and redoubling their emotional intensity until Georgia on My Mind sounded like Salvation's in My Soul. In the process, gospel has become a world-renowned idiom, so far eclipsing the folk spirituals and shouts from which it sprang that the older forms have been virtually forgotten. Every scholarship now passes over these older idioms. I, for one, bitterly regret this tendency, since it threatens the continuance of the finest song genre of this and perhaps any continent, namely the black spiritual. I feel this all the more strongly since I witnessed the forced replacement of the spirituals by gospel in the Delta. What I witnessed that night in Clarksdale was the first step in the process I have just described, the singing sisterhood of the folk research being silenced and brought into line by a male religious coterie, masking their drive for power and profit with platitudes about progress and education. Lewis and I stood outside the church in the dark, listening to all this unhappiness. The folk of the Delta were being required to sing in tune with the piano and in a harmonic style that was foreign to them, and the sound was agonizing. "I am tired, I am weak, I am worn," shrieked the choir. The age-old female religious collective was being replaced by a male-dominated hierarchy. Lewis shook his head. "That choir can't do yet what it's supposed to. I mean, the educated ministers want choirs that they can program, so they, the ministers, can build services to suit themselves. That means the congregation will be following the choir and the piano or just listening. The old sisters and brothers used to raise the songs and lead the services. Now they're not even supposed to say Amen." I thought of the very West African voodoo rituals I'd seen in Haiti. There, most of the ritual consisted of holy dancing and singing by the largely feminine congregation, with brief inputs by the cult leader dealing with the spirits. This African pattern, which had permeated the American folk church, was now being eliminated. We moved on through the Baptist Street Fair, munching away at the kind of watermelon that never travels north of the Mason-Dixon line. Presently, we came to a booth with a sign, Charles Hafford Jr., noted gospel songwriter and Bible lecturer. A huge, black live oak of a man stood behind the counter, his deep voice rumbling out of a General Sherman mustache. These days, everybody got troubled, not only I and you. It's got the rich and the poor, and every nationality, so they don't know what to do. Clearly he was blind, another blind singer, but a man bold and sure of himself, his face strong and calm, closed eyelids adding to the commanding repose of his face. When he came to an end, we asked him about his songs. Haffer opened the briefcase in which he carried his ballad sheets. What a package of death and disaster he handed us. The sinking of the Titanic, the Natchez fire, the storm at Tupelo, a song of a great disaster, time changes everything, these days got everybody troubled. The subtitle of the last one caught me, a patriotic song of the European conflict, taken from the following scriptures: Josh 10:10 through 11, Dan 12:1 through 2, Matt 12:1 through 8, Matt 24:21 through 22, Revelation 16:12 through 14. 11 stanzas advocated the Aid Short of War program that had been the subject of hot debate during 1941. Let's record, I said. Haffer looked worried. It might not be understood in Washington, he said, since our country is now at war. I assured him that no one would criticize him since we had all been confused about the issue at the time. Besides, I added, maybe I'll get a chance to play it for the folks in Washington. The noted gospel songwriter took this calmly. Well, you can do that if you want to, he said very gravely. I've just been trying to do my duty by informing people about what is developing. Although I am blind, the Lord has blessed me with a good understanding and a wife who will read me all the papers. I switched on the turntable. How does it go? I asked. Haffer cleared his throat and began with the chorus. These days got everybody troubled, not only I and you. It's got the rich and the poor and every nationality, so they don't know what to do. This was not quite singing, at least in our prettified provincial view of singing. More like a midnight mountain in the Cameroons humming to itself, a musical lion at his evening devotions, or the old man of the tribe judicially measuring out his advice and prophecies, mixing them with groans. This was the voice of the street evangelist, a husky rumble with such vibrato that you might imagine the vocal cords were not flesh but hemp. Yet every syllable of each $5 word came out clear as a tabloid headline, and somehow the long and heavily weighted verse rippled cleanly over the slow, driving beat of the blind man's foot as it marked the rhythm. I looked at his broadsheet as he sang. These days got everybody troubled. A patriotic song of the European conflict, Part 1. If you stop and listen, I'll sing to you a song about the appointing disaster while the war is going on. I'll tell you how it started and when it all began. I'll tell you about the suffering, but I can't tell when it will end. Chorus. These days got everybody troubled, not only I and you. It's got the rich and the poor and every nationality, so they don't know what to do. It was in the month of September 1939 war broke out in Europe and made everybody troubled in mind. Germany invaded Poland and whipped them into 18 days, drove their leaders in exile, and reduced their people to slaves. Now, England and France were allied and came to Poland's relief and fought together side by side till France was finally beat. After they signed the armistice and France's soldiers went home, England was left with the bag to hold and had to fight alone. Germany and Italy, together with Japan, made and signed a 3-power pact in an effort to rule the land. Denmark, Norway, Holland, and Belgium, and Yugoslavia too, were all invaded by Hitler and placed under German rule. We here in America, a land which God has blessed, live in peace and contentment from east and to the west. Realize the danger which we are up against. That's why we are spending billions for national defense. Hitler's mean and hateful, violates international law. That's why we're giving to England everything short of war. He is a ruthless, cold-blooded murderer, and that in first degree. He has conquered most of European land, and now he wants to rule the sea. Like Satan he walketh about, seeking whom he can devour, having the mouth of the lion, and the dragon gave him his power. He's a military strategist, full of hellish tricks, and the number of his names is 666. Our ships that sail the ocean, bringing goods to you and me, were all forbidden by Hitler to sail the 7 seas. He told us in substance, you keep your ships at home, for they'll certainly be destroyed if they enter the war zone. Our government was patient and tried to be good, tolerated that foolishness as long as it possibly could. But one day Congress reclaimed that freedom of the seas, and now our ships are permitted to go wherever they please. Thousands are taken prisoners, hundreds of thousands killed, thousands are left wounded to die on the battlefield, still others to face starvation and die from hunger and cold. All we can do is ask the Lord to have mercy on their souls. There must be the days that Daniel spoke about. At that time Michael shall stand up, and the dragon be cast out. Maybe these are the unclean spirits that John the Apostle saw, going forth unto the kings of the earth, causing them to make war. The sheet he handed me linked him to the British street singers of the 16th and 17th centuries who kept the public informed of the latest news by composing, singing, and publishing ballads. Their broadsides were, in fact, the earliest newspapers, and, like the tabloids of our time, dwelt on scandals, murders, and disasters. The more lurid and dreadful, the better. Haffer's market was the Baptist Church, which, as the ministers at the convention had made clear, considered its missions in Liberia as important as the war effort, if not more so. Yet Haffer certainly was trying in his way to win his own crowd over to the war party. I changed the subject. The song about the Natchez fire, I asked, was it popular? Oh, popular. That song was popular. I don't have no direct record, but I must have sold 2,000 copies of it. Have you heard other people around the country singing it since? I asked. Sure, lots of people singing it. They buys my songs and sings them and changes them. Sometimes they take them and reprint them and put their name on my songs. I've run across a lot of that. Haffer chuckled, and I guess that this remark was aimed at me. I just give you an idea of how it goes, he said. It's that what we call a warning song. When we write about disasters, our object is to warn the unconverted or the careless or unconcerned Christians. Do you think that if a man dies in sin, he goes right to hell? I asked. Well, Haffer looked grave. That brings in a lot. I don't know about that, but I think the man goes to the grave. There's nothing in the song that consigns anyone to no eternal torture. It just shows that the wicked are to be destroyed. It warns, like this one, about the great storm of March 16th, 19th, and 42. Here's how it goes. On a Monday evening in March, between 4 and 5 o'clock, great buildings play like play toys began to leave their blocks. A fierce storm was raging, which passed through 6 states, leaving a trail of death and destruction in its wake. What a storm that evening! In different parts of the land, what a storm that evening! Men died on every hand. 2 clouds commenced rising in the east and in the west. They rose higher and higher until they finally met. They clashed against each other as it were a ball of fire. There came a terrible roaring like 104th of July. A man and his wife were frightened and gave themselves up to die. Put their arms around each other. Together they wanted to die. The house was blown to pieces, goods scattered everywhere, but when it was all over, they were left standing there. There was a woman with a baby. She was carrying it in her arms. The storm destroyed the woman, but the babe was left unharmed. God works in a mysterious way, his wonders to perform. He hears children when they pray and makes a storm be calm. Now the people seem to appreciate that song mighty well, just like they enjoyed my Song of the Storm, what happened in Tupelo on the first Saturday night in April 1936. I used practically the same tune. What a storm in Tupelo, heard for miles around. What a storm in Tupelo, while so many people went down. Another blind street singer and another song about Tupelo. Senator Bilbo's town, cursed by the battered black man before they swung him up. Ballad making is not just rhyming the news, it fixes an important event in the memory of the people and shapes it to conform to their moral dilemmas and emotional needs. The wicked shall be destroyed, these black poets shout, and the people listening are comforted. God will avenge their wrongs. I began my work in 1909, said Haffer, writing different compositions in the way of song, ballads, and the first song I ever wrote about a big disaster was in 1912 about the sinking of the Titanic. There was big talk about this ship that was thought to be unsinkable. It claimed a lot of attention. Now the women refused to leave their husbands, how the lifeboat was let down wrong, how many was saved, and so forth. At that time, it was an interesting song. If you'll stop and listen, I'll sing to you a song about the time on the ocean when the Titanic vessel went down. I'll tell you about John Jacob Astor with his handsome bride, refused to get in the lifeboat and remained on the vessel and died. Wasn't that a mighty time? Wasn't that a mighty time? Wasn't that a mighty time when the Titanic vessel went down? The bias of poor blacks comes pretty clear in this ballad. The unsinkable Titanic is just another white folks' brag. The rich folks who could afford the luxurious passage pay for their past sins of greed and pride. Meanwhile, Po Shine wags his head sagely and ain't shedding no salty tears when they all drown as a bawdy rhyme, very popular in Coahoma County, makes clear. It was on the 5th of May when the great Titanic went down. Po Shine was on the bottom of the deck. The captain and his mate was having a little chat. Po Shine ran up to the top of the deck. Say, Captain, Captain, the water is now coming in the boiling room door. He say, go back, Po Shine, and pump the water back. We got 152 pumps to keep the water back. Po Shine dashed his black ass overboard and began to swim. The captain say, come back, Po Shine, and save Po me. I'll make you just as rich as any son of a bitch can be. Po Shine looked back over his shoulder and said, what good is money to me in the middle of the sea? Went right ahead. Just then, a millionaire girl walked from the bottom of the deck. She said, come back, Po Shine, and save Po me. I might turn your wife, it's true. He looked back over his shoulder and said, honey, you're puddin'-looking jelly roll, it's true. He said, there are 1,000 in New York as good as you. He swim right ahead. Just then a whale, he jumped up and grinned. Po Shine looked back over his shoulder again at him, jumped up and walked the water like Christ did in Galilee. When the Titanic went down, Po Shine was down in Harlem, almost damn drunk. The devil was laying across his bed. He got up and walked to the door and looked out and he said, they've been a long time coming, but they welcome to hell. It had been a long time since Charles Haffer, the blind gospel songwriter, had drunk his red-eye to toast the Titanic, yet his religious ballad thinly veiled a very similar sentiment. They been a long time coming, but they welcome the hell. I was anxious to learn, if I could, whether Haffer's was the original of the many Titanic songs. Did you hear any other Titanic songs before you wrote yours? I asked. No, sir, but after I wrote that one, other people began to write, and I heard one or two more on the same things. But they wrote different. I reckon I sold 2,000 or 3,000 of mine round over Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, 10 cents each, 2 for 15, 3 for 20, and 4 for 25. That's how it supports myself and my wife, and I'm with a kind of colored newspaper. You write for it? Well, no, I just carry a bunch of papers and sell them, write subscriptions and so forth. I don't beg anybody for anything. I don't ask anybody for anything. I just sell my literature. Lots of people gives me money and don't take the song. Make a pretty good living? Well, it's hard to tell. See, I don't work every day unless it's a convention or association. Generally on a Saturday and over the weekend. Sometimes when there's no depression and everybody's all right, I do right well. Right well. Maybe better than $10 over a weekend. I asked him how he began making ballads. Well, I'll tell you, my father was a minister. I was born in Desha County, Arkansas, and my blindness come to me when I was just a boy, about the time my father moved down to Mississippi. The giant blind man fell silent for a moment. I saw the hurt in his face, which looked as if the Lord had passed a hand somewhat too roughly across his forehead. He went on. I reckon I might say I was talented for singing. Before I was converted, I used to sing all the old jump-up songs. Blues weren't in style then. We called them reels. The biggest music I know was the fiddle and the harp. They danced by fiddles those days, and they had fellows they paid to come and call figures for 'em. I don't hear talk of that now. Swing your partner, swing your corner. The old fiddlers played Old Hen Cackle, Shortening Bread, Mississippi Sawyer, Bill Bailey, Why Don't You Come Home, It Ain't Gonna Rain No More, all that stuff. Well, in those days when they used to have parties, they would send around for me to sing for 'em. See, they had candy, knockings in lay-by season, and cotton pickings. They don't have 'em now, when they'd clear out the cotton and plenty of something to eat and drink for people. Back around that time, the guitar came into style, and the first blues I remember originated from a sheriff named Joe Turner. He was a kind of bad man, and if he'd go after you, why, he'd bring you. His blues was very famous, and so was Make Me a Pallet on Your Floor. Yes, we were entering into a jazz age, and the old world was being transformed. Time changes everything, and time changed me too. I gave up all those worldly reels when I was converted. The first song I ever wrote was called Stand By Me. It made such a big hit that people advised me to print it, and I began from that, writing different compositions. Since the year 1909, I take it for granted. I think I've wrote over 100. The way songs come to me, practically all of them that I write, I imagine I hear some voice singing and the verses come to me. The tune even comes to me that way. The tune that I hear, it's sung in, I just start singing it myself in that tune. Now, they all don't come to me all at once. I might get 2 or 3 verses wrote today. That song will stay off my mind, and maybe in a few days, it's come right back to me again. Sometimes it takes maybe a week or a month to get one song composed. If your mind is clouded with other things, if your situation is not so very pleasant, if you're in a jam and trying to make ends meet, it takes you longer than it would if you didn't have nothing to do but write. Of course, unless it comes to me, unless I'm moved by the Spirit, I can't write a song. In fact, to be fair with you, I think all of my songs are written under inspiration because I try not to write, I try not to write any foolishness. Which says it all so far as any serious artist is concerned. Try not to write any foolishness. This bard, blind and black, hedging along the pavements of the Mississippi cotton capital, pitting his great voice against the thunder of the jukeboxes, standing up the cracker law. Some of 'em talk abrupt, come up cursing. Get out of here or we'll put you in jail. Some of 'em is nicer and say, what you're doing is all right, but under the law, we can't let you sing on the street. And some of 'em talk fair. Get over on the other side of the street where you won't block the sidewalk and have all the fun you want. Singing for his living in the open until his voice goes as rough as a currycomb, encountering the shame of his own people. About 3/4 of the ministers likes my work, and a part the other fourth. This latter-day people's poet of the streets yet maintains his artist's seriousness, yet says against all the world, I try not to write any foolishness. Haffer intoned his ballad of the Second World War, a ballad that describes war as man-made pestilence, but which asserts, on the streets of Mississippi towns darkened by prejudice, that the American black is, in spite of everything, a shining and courageous patriot. There's strange things happening in the land, strange things happening in the land. War's going on, cause our hearts to mourn. Strange things happening in the land. Oh, you read the Holy Bible. Matthew does record pestilence and earthquake, and also rumors of war. You see, it's God's own will. The Bible should be fulfilled. Strange things happening in the land. Nations against nations, rising up in this land. Kingdoms against kingdoms. You better understand. No need to be surprised. The end is drawing nigh. Strange things happening in this land. Daniel spoke about it. John the Revelator too. Jesus substantiated it, and the prophecy must come true. God can't lie. He declared man must die. Strange things happening in this land. Now Wilson said to the Kaiser, please let my vessels be. Kaiser said to Wilson, keep your vessels off the sea. If you put them on the streams, they'll meet my submarines. Strange things happening in this land. He tried to fool the Negro by saying they oughtn't to fight. They have no home or country, no flag or civil right. But the Negro knew the best, and the deeds proved the rest. Strange things happening in the land. Strange things happening in the land. Strange things happening in the land. I say war's going on, cause our hearts to mourn. Strange thing happening in this land. The blind black prophets bawling their wares outside the Baptist convention pictured a world constantly punished by God with storms, wars, and disasters because of mankind's wickedness. Clearly, these folk poets and their audience believed that this punishment was deserved, and here they voiced age-old beliefs. The ballad mongers of Old England hawked song sheets like those of Blind Man Haffer, telling of monsters swallowing whole fleets at sea, of plagues sweeping through cities, of maidens carried off by dragons, an endless recital of disasters, vengeance falling upon a wicked world. The fairy tales of peasant Europe are peopled with ogres, cruel tyrants, witches, fire-eating dragons, vicious stepmothers, all finally brought to account through their own wickedness. These fictitious monsters mirror the very real tyrants who, for eons, have subjected slaves, serfs, peons, women, children, and, recently, blacks to deprivation and humiliation, and to savage violence if they resisted. For millennia, all of us have been comforted by bedtime stories in which these villains had their bloody comeuppance, preparing us for the even more savage adventures of our compensatory dreams. All these violent fictions channel the rage that fills all our hearts when we are unjustly and cruelly treated and cannot fight back. Haffer's Ballad of Disaster, however, did not prepare me for what I was to encounter when Lewis and I re-entered the church where the Baptist convention was proceeding. By then, every seat was filled. The worshipers had dressed up to the nines, many of the ladies wearing bonnets decorated with plumes and birds. You could see these were folks who counted for something in their Delta communities. The time had arrived for the ministers, seated in a row on the dais, to show their leadership. One after another, they stepped forward and led the congregation in prayers, long, beautifully intoned utterances, to which the congregation responded in melodic phrases. Together, they created a sort of free-form song in which the parts continuously overlapped in the African style. One minister succeeded another in displays of keening and oratory. I confess that I blacked out at times and did not attend to all that happened. Even playing back later to hear what had been recorded, I find I could not focus for long on this scene. It was too intense, too pain-filled. It had the emotional level and the sheer force of operatic recitative, yet there was no make-believe. The agony was real. The impassioned coloratura of the ministers, the musical cries of the congregants, plainly came from the throats of tormented people. Perhaps some of these Black Baptists had property and money, but they had no rights before the law, and their very existence depended on their acceptance of a lower caste position. The grave minister was chanting, pouring out their troubles in his prayer, and the congregation was responding to every turn of his warm baritone. O Jesus, my rock, in a weary land, yes, our shelter in a time of storm, please have mercy tonight, yes. O Lord, more high-pitched agony, shriller, Lord, 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 Lord Jesus, scream, howdy, woman shouts, I know you heard me one Saturday morning when I was in sin. Palms smacked together for emphasis with agony. First strong responses from women as shouting fervor begins. You got on my side, you cut loose my stammering tongue, set my heart on fire. Long pause filled by the clear-voiced ooh of women. Lord, Lord, ooh, scream, all right. Ooh, when I can't even make it no more. Pause, someone begins to hum a tune. When we can't get together no more. Oh, you promise you lead me, yeah. Ooh, high-pitched cry, go over here. Ooh, Lord, you push back the dark clouds over yonder, where there no more crying, yeah. No more heartaches, yeah. No more sorrow. Ooh, get me home. Let me sit down, rest for myself. Certainly, the agony of this service in part reflected the agonizing scenes at railway depots all over the Deep South, where mothers and sweethearts were bidding hysterical farewells to sons and lovers going overseas. Many of these people were virtually illiterate. Many had no developed conviction about the war, and few had any clear ideas about where their sons and husbands were being sent. The next minister expressed these confused and painful feelings. O Lord, my Father, we need you this evening. He's putting an ah at the end of every phrase. The congregation is beginning to sway in the storm of feeling. The minister begins to inhale noisily, like an exhausted swimmer. That are causing men to die. Mussolini needs you this evening. He's causing men to die. O Lord, have mercy on us. O Lord, we know no sinners here this evening, but let every one of us tell him to get behind us. Have mercy, my Father. Now bless the convention workers. Bless the ministers. You know the world. Ah, a tremulous cry. Come over here and baptize us. They're making war on every hand. The world. There is no shame there. The world. Again, a long, wailing tremolo. It's got us wringing our hands and crying, shedding burning tears. And when the war's over, oh Lord, when I can't pray no more. Oh Lord, when I can't go no more. When I got to lay down and die. Oh Lord. He starts crying, and one of the men of the congregation says, That's all right, buddy. These next lines were performed in a staccato and high-pitched voice, full of anger and fear. You know I can't help from loving you, because you loved me myself, long before I knew what love is. And when my time have come, I've got the king's crown and coming glory. And when I come down to the river, help me to pull off my war coat and enter. I'll enter the name of the Lord. Make my enemies out a liar. Make us able to bear our burdens. A handsome young minister with a voice like a silver trumpet began to pray, and suddenly I tuned in. Like every Southerner, I had been raised to believe that blacks were contented with their lot. We had been taught not to think about the bad housing, the poor schools, the exclusion from restaurants, the Jim Crow rules about bathrooms and drinking fountains. We had been taught not to think about the bad housing, the poor schools, the exclusion from restaurants, the Jim Crow rules about bathrooms and drinking fountains, the beatings, the police brutality, even the lynch. A prosperous and expanding America had taken almost all this for granted. We had all got used to the convenience of a black undercaste that would do all the hot, dirty jobs for whatever we paid them and thank us for giving them a chance. We were used to the smiling and subservient black because the Southern police customarily arrested any black who even wore a sullen look. In those days, there was silence across America about these things, a silence that deepened in the South, except my ears were telling me in church meetings like this. The prayer meeting, which had literally turned me off, was, I realized, a theater where these sorrows could be voiced and shared. The grievances might be veiled, I thought as I looked round at the sorrowing faces, but the grief was unrestrained. Meantime, the voice of the young minister rose higher and higher. Please, sir, have mercy. O Lord, O Lord. Oh, we want to thank you. Please, sir, have mercy. You kept back the hands of death. You beat our enemies and made them behave. You made them let us alone in Clarksdale. Please, sir, have mercy. O Lord, O Lord. They all knew there was little mercy in their surroundings. They had heard about what had happened to Bessie Smith in 1937 in their hometown. Wounded in a local car wreck, the great blues singer was refused admission to 3 Clarksdale hospitals because she was black. In the end, she bled to death without medical attention, while her friends pled with the hospital authorities to admit her. And this incident was typical of the Deep South. The placatory outcries of this fine young man filled with pleas to an all-powerful but kindly master to please, please have mercy, sir, were an unpleasant reminder of the subservience that was life insurance to every Delta black. Oh Lord, please, sir, have mercy. Oh Lord, we've been traveling a long time. Ooh, howling melody like a rising wind. We've been bothering you tonight, Lord, but you know we need you, Jesus. Can't get along without you. Bless our association, we humbly beg thee. Bless our convention, we humbly beg thee. Stand by Reverend Cozy when he's fallen. Oh, prop, oh, catch him when he about to fall. Oh, Lord, when the battle is over with. Oh, we got to come off the battlefield. The congregation goes into a frenzied response, many people shouting. And we can't meet in Clarksdale. We can't meet at another convention. You that promised me a long time ago, oh, you'd make up my dying bed. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Ooh, rock me, Lord, woman shrieking. Oh, look out, Reverend, till I stop crying. Yes. Oh, sweetest Mana. Oh, my head. Oh, you promised, oh, that you'd meet me. Oh, Lord, rise and cry. Hey, come on and meet me. Oh, don't let me come into your kingdom crying. Rock, oh, rock in this weary land. The voices of the preacher and the convention blended in a sound that shook the building. Tears streamed down many faces, and yet this was the normal end of a very conventional Delta Church service. I felt witness to things I knew little about, feelings that were beyond my comprehension. My heart had struck a depth of sorrow and hurt such as I had never imagined. I began to see what a painful road I was to travel in the land where the blues began.